Shots have been fired in what could turn into an all-out trade war with China. President Trump ordered a 25% tax on $34 billion worth of goods imported from China, including car parts and medical devices. China quickly retaliated with new tariffs on American-made products, including pork, soybeans, and cars. And one U.S. state that could be caught in the middle of a trade war is Wisconsin. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce warns that tariffs could slice $1 billion off of Wisconsin's exports, most notably its cheese. Dean Reynolds reports.
Stacy Lindbergh's family owns a small dairy farm with 75 cows and a lot of anxiety.
We don't make a lot of money. We're not really making any money at this point in time.
While a glut of milk in the U.S. has driven down U.S. dairy prices for the last few years, President Trump's tariff tiff may make matters even worse by forcing foreign customers to look for cheaper dairy products from other sources. Stacy supports the president, but worries about what a trade war would mean.
Everything is very uncertain at this point.
Her farm in Plymouth, Wisconsin, sends all its milk to Sartori Company, makers of a variety of cheeses.
This was milk just a few hours ago. Yes.
12% of what Sartori makes is exported, with Canada and Mexico its main foreign markets. But Mexico's new 25% tariff on American cheese, in retaliation for the American tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, means Sartori cheese is suddenly more expensive there. Sartori President Jeff Schwager.
Mexico has already signed a free trade agreement with the European Union. So Europe can export cheese there with no tariff, no duty. So if this is going to go on long term, the customers down there will look for an alternative product without the tariffs on it.
Other Wisconsin exports like cranberries or apples could be adversely affected, and Schwager says once those markets are lost,
it's going to take us a long time to get that shelf space back at the grocery store.
Hard cheese for dairy farmers like Stacy Lindbergh. Dean Reynolds, CBS News, Plymouth, Wisconsin.
Anna Swanson is a trade reporter for the New York Times. She joins me now from our Washington bureau to discuss these tariffs. Anna, how will these tariffs, both on U.S. products and on Chinese products, affect American companies?
Well, almost immediately, these tariffs are going to be raising prices for American companies that import products from China. As you might know, China is kind of a factory to the world, so there are many supply chains that run through that country. The Trump administration has decided to focus its tariffs not on the kind of consumer goods that you often see in Walmart, things like clothing, shoes, and televisions, but instead to focus on intermediate goods, the type that are used in factories in the United States to make other products. So actually, it's going to raise prices for a lot of small and medium-sized manufacturers, especially. Retaliation is going to be hitting a variety of industries, including farm country. And so those are two big bases of support for the president that are going to be paying for these tariffs.
That's an interesting point that you're making, because we instantly think of products, finished products, but you're talking about the pieces to the product. So it becomes even more complicated to follow the money, as it were, and to see the effects. But what so many American manufacturers seem to be worried about, and I wonder if you would agree, is that once they lose the market on some of these products, someone else waiting in the wings, Brazil, another manufacturing country that can offer China the same product at a cheaper price, will then take over that industry.
I definitely think that is a risk. So the president has said that these tariffs are a negotiating tactic, and the point is to get other countries to lower their tariffs. But in the meantime, they are going into effect, and customers in other countries are making different decisions, and some are choosing to move away from American products, which are now more expensive. I was talking with a soybean farmer earlier today, and he said that it took years to develop these markets in China China, and he's worried that they could just be wiped out with the stroke of a pen. There are alternatives. China can choose to buy soybeans from Brazil. We may see more planting in that country as a result. And so while many countries, including China, will continue to buy American products, they are going to start to shift their purchases as a result.
And are there signs that other countries, like you mentioned Brazil with soybeans, but other countries for other products, are looking at this as a great opportunity and are, reaching out to China and saying, hey, look at our crop of X, Y, and Z?
I definitely think that is happening. And actually, China is trying to play this as the United States bullying China and bullying other countries. So in its statements today, it was saying that, it was comparing itself with the situation of the rest of the world, which are being hit by tariffs as well. We also see China and the European Union right now, for example, appearing to be in discussions about closer investment ties. So the rest of the world is moving on with trade agreements and investment agreements as the Trump administration takes this more aggressive tactic.
I guess that's a danger to going at this alone rather than trying to get allies into a trade war. But I want to ask about people in China, consumers in China and manufacturers in China. How are they reacting to the tariff news?
Well, most of what I've been following is through the Chinese media, and in the Chinese media, it's portrayed as an important national issue to stand up to the United States, to stand up to this bullying from President Trump. And I think that's something that Chinese consumers are likely to be supportive of. They may not want to pay higher prices for many of these agricultural products that they're importing from the United States, and that could be an issue in the future. But, often people talk about who is going to hurt more from this trade war. Is it going to be the United States or is it going to be China? And China does export more products to the United States, far more, so there is a lot more that could be hit. But on the other hand, China is not a democracy. The government there controls the media. So I think you're going to see a lot more dissent about this trade war in the United States than you will internally in China.
That makes sense. Now, in addition to these tariffs and counter tariffs with China, the United States is also fighting a trade battle with Mexico, Canada, and the European Union. How are all of these different?
Yeah, so it is a really unique moment because the president is taking on not just China, but a lot of allies as well. And that has been somewhat more controversial than his China measures. The tariffs against our allies are centered on a different subject. They're about steel and aluminum imports. But we do have tens of billions of dollars of tariffs right now on countries including Canada, Mexico, the European Union, and Japan. Our allies are really seeing this as an affront. Many saying we would band with you to go against China. China is the real culprit in terms of unfair trade here, but the Trump administration is focused on kind of allies and adversaries alike with these trade measures.
Absolutely. It's a very interesting strategy in that regard. And as we were just saying, the president has now enacted tariffs on all 5 of our top trading partners, China, Canada, Mexico, the EU, and Japan. And of that group, only Japan has not yet retaliated. Do we know why that is?
Well, there have been some discussions surrounding North Korea. Japan has had some other priorities, for example, helping to return some Japanese people who were kidnapped there. I think they also really wanted to see a successful North Korea summit. So there have been some other areas of cooperation. But we could see retaliation if other trade measures go forward. So the president has proposed further trade measures beyond what we've seen already. One of the biggest ones is tariffs on auto and auto parts. That would be many times larger than these current tariffs that we're looking at on China. And that would heavily hit Japan as well as allies, again, Canada, Mexico, and the European Union.
Now, in terms of the average American consumer, where are we going to feel this first? Are the cost of basic electronics going to go up? What are we going to feel in our pocketbook?
Yeah, well, because these tariffs hit some of these intermediate goods in the supply chain, they're not going to be, directly on your shoes or directly on your flat screen TVs, but they will be passed along eventually. I mean, somebody needs to pay this price. Mm-hmm. It could be the company in China, it could be the manufacturer in the United States, or it could be the consumer. Right. And many companies I've been talking to have said that they will pass some of those costs along to consumers. So, everything from medical devices to mini fridges. It's really just a wide array of products. You may not notice it right away, but that price inflation is going to be there.
Well, I have to say, I was recently in the market for a cedar fence, and the price has gone way up because the cedar comes from Canada. So
you're right.
That was a direct hit right there.
Absolutely.
New York Times trade reporter Anna Swanson, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.